Hi Mark, thanks for having me over today. The topic I chose for our little chat was fiction and leadership. And how I found it was I was listening to an HBR cast on my way to work, and they had a Harvard Business School professor come on and talk about a course that he runs called Moral Leadership, where instead of doing cases, they read classical fiction and analyze the characters and the plot. What really resonated with me is that I had been reading a lot of nonfiction this whole year, lots of business, economics, leadership, biographies, and it was starting to become stale. And even the leadership stuff, which I love. And what really struck a chord with me was how reading fiction really allows me to balance my perspectives. So specifically, I was starting to find the business and leadership literature too polished, that everything worked out in the end, that I only saw what worked or was a colossal failure, and I really didn't see the in-between. The second piece about that was everything in business and leadership economics is narrated from a second or third person perspective, and so I was really missing that ability to get inside someone's head and understand how they're thinking and really stretch that part of my brain. The second piece was really actually change the game on my brain, which was switching from left brain, analytical, really looking at what a business is doing, critical thought, how a model's working, did that make sense in the market, to the right brain of, how is this person feeling? What is their action? What's going on for them personally? What's the moral or ethical quandary, and how are they actually dealing in that with including family and friends and their business and just life in general, where it wasn't polished. So I had two main takeaways from reading this. The first is called, quote unquote, the gray things. And I'll read an excerpt. They really see large, complex, sometimes messy sphere of things that are genuinely ethical. And you get in an organization and I think the higher you get in a well-run organization, the more stuff you have to deal with that's just gray. It's complex. And it sort of gets delegated up because it can't be put in a category or handled by a technique by somebody else. And so these gray things just land on people's desks. And I have gray things land on my desk all the time that I don't know how to handle and that I actually have to think through. There's no model to really make that decision for me. And so why this stood out to me was that it really shows fiction as introducing people to ethical complexities, that great literature generally has conflict at the center of it, and working through the conflict from multiple perspectives allows you a better understanding of the conflict as a whole. So we have gray things, and then the next piece is that we have to make decisions, that even if you put all of the ethical complexities in a SWOT model, it doesn't tell you how to make a decision. It doesn't say that your greatest strength might also be your greatest weakness, or to move into an area of opportunity, you have to let go what's currently making you the most money. Those are hard decisions to make. And he has a good quote about this. Literature lets you see leaders from the inside. You share the sense of why they are thinking and feeling. In real life, you're usually at some distance, and things are prepared and polished. With literature, you can see the whole messy collection of things that happen inside our heads. What I love about this and what I like about reading fiction is that it allows me the first-person narration, that I can actually review and think about each person's perspective, and I get all the perspectives versus just mine or when I'm reading a case. And the second piece is that I can actually reflect on the decisions that they made throughout reading the book. That when an individual comes across a moral complexity, or even just an argument with their boss or their spouse, there's moments where I can actually stop, take a step back, reflect, and think critically about that. Why are they making that decision? What led them to have the feelings or value set that way? How else could they make it? And I do sometimes have fun playing out alternate endings of the book, whether someone made a different decision or not. So I think the main takeaway for me is really that I've added fiction into my repertoire. Now have a one fiction book going for however many other business books, and it just grounds me and balances out the perspective.
Cool. So the immediate thought I had was, what if you had a nonfiction book that was written as a personal story of, say, a business leader or an entrepreneur?
I think those are great. I have read those, and I find that they're often contrived. There's still a story, and the author's trying to make a point. When I think about great literature, everything from like Macbeth or Tolstoy, or even like more modern stuff, Fitzpatrick, what am I reading now? Harbach. Like really the stories are stories for the sake of stories, and you get to experience the characters for what would actually happen in real life, not to make a business or moral point. Not that those books don't have merit. I find I enjoy being completely removed from that business sphere and then being able to tie the parallels back.
And do you ever find when you're reading fiction that the characters are perhaps, or rather their emotions are overemphasized to the point where when you talk about the gray area in business, that it becomes almost unrealistic to draw parallels?
I think there's a lot of bad literature out there, and when you're really working with great authors, they make the characters realistic, and they actually have them wrestle with a complex issue in a way that I think a lot of people would consider rational, and that they would also work through a problem. There's lots of novels out there that satirize and use hyperbole to make a point and to make for good reading and fun reading. But that's not what I'm looking at. It's really more about great works of fiction and the stories that they tell and the characters who are played in them.
Cool. I think we're good.
Yeah!